Talk about this narrative. Look, the Israel, it's the ancestral homeland of the Palestinian people. Since time immemorial, you hear that. But that wasn't really the case, was it? I mean, there wasn't really a Palestinian identity, a national identity, you point out in the book, really until the late 1960s.
The Palestinians, the Arabs living in Palestine, never saw themselves as a distinct, separate people group, nation, separate from all other Arabs, until after the 1967 war. There were some Arab intellectuals living in Palestine who, in the 1920s, said, we believe that we are becoming a separate Palestinian people. They existed. But you're not really a people, according to most definitions, until that national feeling becomes widespread. That was the definition Woodrow Wilson used. Until that national feeling becomes widespread. The national feeling that the Palestinians are a separate, distinct people did not become widespread until after the 1967 war.
After the Six-Day War.
And here's the amazing thing. As soon as the Palestinians said, we're a separate people, a new people, but we're a separate people who want our own independent nation, the Jewish people, one of the oldest peoples on earth, 3,000 years old, the Jewish people did not respond to that Palestinian decision that we're a separate people now. They didn't respond to it with laughter or derision. They responded to it by saying, okay, fine, let's split the land with you. Let's share the land with you. The Israelis offered to split it, to share it. It was this new people that didn't say thank you, how gracious of you, how generous of you, but said no, and said no violently. Yeah,
we're going to talk about that a bit more, David. You know, it's interesting, you lay out in the book, Reclaiming Israel's History, the must-read new book, the vision of men like Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, Chaim Weizmann, David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, who saw Israel as a multicultural, tolerant society, as you said, who were welcoming to the Arab peoples.
Herzl envisioned a multicultural state where Jews and Arabs had complete equality, and he envisioned a dream where mosques would be next door to synagogues and prayers would mingle on their way to God. You look at the reality.
A uniquely Jewish concept.
Right. And you look at the reality now of radical Islamic terror seeking to murder Christians and murder Jews and murder Muslims who don't share their brand of Islam. And I think what a beautiful vision and what a disastrous response in reality. Here's the last point I want to make. The Zionist leaders who implemented his vision stayed 100% loyal to that dream. They sought coexistence at every opportunity. They sought brotherhood at every opportunity. They sought to split the land. The minute the Palestinians said, you know what? We think we're a separate people. We think we want our own independent country. Unfortunately, those efforts, those visions, that dream was rejected and rejected violently by the people who ruled the Arabs of Palestine and the people who ruled the Palestinians. Not every Arab rejected that vision. Not every Palestinian rejected that vision. And it's important to note, there were Arabs and Palestinians and Muslims who embraced that vision and wanted to work with and thrive with and prosper with the Jews. Unfortunately, their leaders rejected it time after time after time. And because their leaders rejected it, both Jews and Arabs, Jews, Christians, and Muslims suffered as a consequence.
Talk about where the name Palestine came from. Kind of an interesting origin to the name Palestine. A lot of times people ask, Palestine, what's it all about? Israel, which is it?
The Romans got tired of these pesky Jews in Judea. Judea was a province of the Roman Empire. And the inhabitants of Judea we call Jews. That's where the name Jew comes from. The Jews were rebellious. They rebelled against Rome in 70 AD, and they rebelled again in 132 under Bar Kokhba. The Romans had enough of these Jews and their rebellions. Not only are we going to destroy their cities and exile large percentages of the Jews, although not all of the Jews, we're going to try to sever the connection between the Jewish people and Judea by changing the name of the country. And let's pick a name that will really insult the Jews of Judea.
It was such a dig.
Let's pick the name of their traditional historic enemies, the Philistines, the people who lived along the coast and constantly fought with and invaded Judea. And so they called the land Philistina, which eventually over the years became Palestina or Palestine. And so the name actually came from a desire to disconnect the bond between the Jews and Judea. look, if they had never changed the name, the people living in Judea would be known to this day as Judeans or Jews.
That's right.
So I mentioned there have been repeated offers to split the land. One of those offers came in 1947 when the United Nations voted to split Palestine into two countries, one for the Jews and one for the Arabs. The Jews were offered about 55% of the land by the United Nations, although a large majority of that 55% was pure desert. The Arabs were offered the rest, although what they were offered had almost no desert. So it was a pretty good offer. The Jews were going to be denied Jerusalem, where they had been a majority for a long time, and they were going to be denied Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland. Despite this, they said, you know what? We're so happy with this offer of statehood anywhere in our ancient land, we'll take it. They said yes to the United Nations offer. The night after the UN voted to create a Jewish state in part of Palestine, they went out into the streets and danced for joy.
Yeah, the Jewish people eagerly accepted, which wasn't the greatest offer, as you said.
It was a very bad offer.
It was
but
a bad
again,
offer.
They so much wanted independence and were so willing to compromise. They danced in the streets with joy. The Arabs of Palestine and the surrounding Arab nations had a bit of a different response. They said no to the offer, and they didn't just say no with words. The very next day, the Arabs of Palestine launched a war against the Jews of Palestine in an effort to destroy the Jewish state before it could be born. Of the Arab villages of Palestine, about half of them went to war with their Jewish neighbors in an effort to destroy the Jewish state before it could be born. Later, the Arab nations bordering Israel joined in on the fight, and so it became an effort of the Arabs of Palestine and their Arab neighbors to destroy the Jewish state before it could be born. Here's the thing. Had the Arabs accepted this offer and not gone to war in an effort to destroy the Jewish state, there would not have been so much as one Palestinian Arab refugee. There were no Palestinian Arab refugees before this war. As we discussed earlier, the Arab population of Palestine was growing and thriving because of the Jewish return.
Folks, I love David's book because it provides the intellectual ammo we need in our fight against the Israel haters. Israel's cause is a just cause, as David lays out so well. And he'll be back next week to share more from his great new book, Reclaiming Israel's History. Pick it up.